your practice journal, and what is the value for young musicians to start getting that as an aspect of their practice routine and just being, their career as and taking this seriously?
Yeah, and I'll show you. I'll show you one of my my sample kind of page that I use here.
Okay.
Um, so I kind of divide. This is just for me, like whatever works for other people. I kind of divide it into sections. So I have like a technique block, maybe, or I have some exercise that I run. Then maybe some music. Then maybe another technique block, and then maybe some composition, something like that. So what I do is like write what I did, because two things can happen. Number one, you think you did more than you did. Like, man, I was down there for an hour, but you forget you checked your Instagram for 20 minutes and
Right, right.
you did this and you did that. So, and then just kind of tracking your progress in terms of, where you started an exercise at, and this is not very jazz based, this particular page. This is more geared toward the technical stuff. Dirt is an exercise. I talk about going through each exercise you do in 12 scales. You go through each of those scales, and I kind of talk about like how fast I was able to get with them, what mistakes I made, and you get as detailed or not detailed as you want. Maybe going through. Then when you get to your music, you go through your music, and the point of all of that really is not only to see like where you're not good, right? So when you so when you do this, you get to come back the next day and pick up right where you left off. Okay, this is where I stunk. And if the goal is to work on the worst thing and make it your best thing every single time, you can look like, all right, every time I get to F sharp, I'm bailing. Like I can't get past 140, 120, whatever. I'm going to start with F sharp today, and that's where I'm going to spend most of the time. And then I'm going to move forward and do it like this. And then, so you can have more productive sessions, right? And productivity is the thing that's going to make these sessions feel good and give you the feeling you need to continue to practice the next time. The worst is when you're like, I'm playing in front of the instrument, and you stand in there in 10 minutes, you're like, what do I do? All right, I guess I got this tune I can work on, or I can just work on the same old things. And by that time, half your time is gone. And now you're kind of out of time. So this way, you can feel progressive, but also an ancillary benefit is that there are times, and especially now, I think in these times we're in now, where you can feel like you're not progressing much at all, where you can feel like you haven't gotten any better. And sometimes I like to look back a month or two at where I was at, and what I was doing, and how fast I was playing stuff, or how good I was playing stuff, or how much stuff I was playing, or some of the questions I was asking in my practice journal, to be like, wow, I couldn't even play that at that tempo back then. Man, I couldn't even play this back then. I was asking a question about that. Man, I know that answer, and like I could play that now in these kinds of situations, just to make sure you realize that, like, even if you're making small progress, that progress amortized over time equals big results, right? So,
Well, that's actually really smart, because we're not our best critic. We're not our most objective observer. So having the objective kind of track record on things, do you set at any point, because you're kind of talking about this, picking up where you left off, are you setting a larger, maybe, and by large it doesn't have to be massive, but just larger goals, so that is tracking up to those points? Like, so you're saying the goal could be a tune, a project, and then you'll set that kind of out in the journal.
yeah, so most of the time, and like I said, I don't do as much technique work nowadays, especially when it comes to like building speed and dexterity and things like that. So this is a little more of an example. Most of the time, this will look like working on 12 songs, and which songs I worked on when, and where I got up to, and what my played with recording, got through it, never, or didn't get through all of it. Here's a spot I keep on messing up, target that spot. And it'll be like that. So usually nowadays, when I'm really intense on the practicing, is when I have something coming up, which is different now, obviously. But typically, it's you got something happening. So I'm doing my best to create my own things. Like, I play these concerts with my girls and all this kind of stuff like that. So we have like a schedule of shows that we lay out, and
Yeah.
I'm challenging myself with some new things like singing. I'm gonna try singing next one.
Yes.
I said it in public, so that I have to stick to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, social proof. You got to do it.
Right, exactly. So I mean, so stuff like that. But overall, for me, it's from a show to show or project to project, and it'll relate to here's what I have to be, and then I'll reverse engineer. So if we have and this goes back to the musical directing thing. If I know we have, like, we were in Pittsburgh end of January 25th or whatever it was, I want a week before that to be running down all the tunes, maybe even a week and a half, depending on how much time I have before that, to be running all the tunes with the recording with no breaks. And so that's the goal. And then if I know I have to be there a week and a half before, that means that 2 weeks before I need to be at this tempo with these tunes, or I need to have this many tunes with the record, whatever. And then that means 3 weeks before this, and 4 weeks before this, leading me all the way back. And that's how I plan those things out. So each day kind of has like those goals at the bottom, and I write those out. I don't write those out each day. I write them out when I know I have the project, so I know where I'm trying to get to.
Awesome. And you and I both know, I mean, one of the huge values here is that, like what you said earlier, once you're out of if you're not in a school system that's feeding you the goal, like there is no goal except what you're motivated by or what you decide to come up with yourself. I mean, no one's handing you that kind of iteration except for that own internal drive. And if you don't have that, like you can set those yourself. So having this helps you really build those pillars and set the game plan for the long term, because it's not like your curriculum's handed to you after school.
Yeah, and also I never went through all the way through traditional music school, so I never had I could say I never gained the strengths nor the handicaps that come with that. Yeah. So there was never like there's tests and this and this and this. So I've always had to kind of create my own, goals, my own deadlines, and I think I have my father came over here, he immigrated here from Jamaica, didn't get past the third grade and made a really good life for himself. My brothers have always been entrepreneurs. So to me, I never even thought that was a limitation at any point until, I never really thought it was. I mean, there's things that I wish, like when I see a student now who I know is succeeding at school and music, and they're just rock stars, of course, but for me, it wasn't, I got to work and I just wasn't traditional schooling person.
Hey, neither was I. I think it's a general asset over the long term, from how I personally feel about it. But
I just think education happens, as a result, though, I have holes in my theory that I've been filling little by little, so whereas somebody else may have holes in the things we're talking about, like how do we go out and get the job? How do we be a music director? How do we be an entrepreneur? How do we do those things? So you have to get your education one way or the other. I just chose a less popular route, I guess.
Hey, well, either way, I mean,